Some technical notes before we start. We are recording this discussion. So if you have any problem of your picture appears in the video, I kindly ask you to turn off your video. I also kindly ask you to keep your microphone muted. We will have 15 minutes at the end of this discussion for to answer and address your questions. We will have with us, hopefully she will attend, Her Excellency Maysoon Al-Damluji, the cultural advisor to the Iraqi president, as well as a representative from the EU delegation in Iraq. But we will start with Paolo. Our event is focusing today on the flagship of UNESCO, the historical initiative known as Revive the Spirit of Mosul. An initiative, as I put in the links here in the chat for you to read more about the initiative and the timeline of the initiative. It was launched in February 2018 to reconstruct the historical mosque of Mosul, which was destroyed during the Battle of Mosul by the terrorist organization Daesh. But then the initiative was actually developed when the UAE, United Arab Emirates, pledged funding for the project, $50 million, and then the EU, the European Union, through their EU aid, also donated to the initiative. The initiative is not only focusing on the cultural heritage, but also on the economical life, the education, youth, and all the other aspects of art and culture. I have given this brief introduction to the initiative because Paolo here is not to discuss the initiative itself, rather the most important element of the initiative, which is the human aspect of this initiative, its impact on the people of Mosul, and how the people of Mosul are interacting with this initiative, and what does it mean actually to the people of Mosul. Please, Paolo, the floor is yours, and with my last note on the human element and the human aspect of this initiative. You are in Iraq, you are living in everyday life of Iraq, communicating with the local parties, with the local people, with following all the reconstruction of these important sites in Iraq, despite the COVID-19 and other problems might occur during your work. The floor is yours. And before I start, I would like to welcome the new Dutch ambassador to Iraq, who was actually also one of our guests. Before he was the ambassador, but now he is the ambassador. Thank you, everyone. And the floor is yours, Paolo.
Yeah, well, thank you, Omar, and thank to everybody who's around this virtual table. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing. As you said, the initiative starts with the Kuwait conference on Iraq just after the end of conflict with Daesh, and you know, it was a pledge on the part of Unesco to try and help as much as we could in our areas of expertise. So there we are. You know, it took us a little bit to get the funding was pretty rapidly arriving, I have to say, but then setting up emotional things took us about a year before. So until the beginning of 2019, we really didn't have access actually to, for example, the Al-Noor Mosque, or we couldn't really act. It is of course a privilege for me to be here working on this. You're from Mosul, so you know the kind of destruction that the city have been going through. As you know, as everybody knows, but you most and everybody, I don't think we're talking only about physical distraction. We're talking also about a sort of mental and psychological, shock that the population had to go through the years of conflict and also the years of Daesh occupation of the city. The idea behind UNESCO working on this is the idea of rallying around a city that is a symbol of Iraq as a multicultural, multi-religious place where people can dialogue and talk. The issue of Mosul is the issue of creation, artistic creation, intellectual creation, publication in the university, and the entire book, for example, economy, without talking about the art that goes throughout the millennium. So we thought that what a better symbol than to use that city in order to symbolize the rebirth of Iraq. But for us, Mosul is not about the stones in Mosul. It is about the people in Mosul. What we're doing, and thank again to the donors, is thanks to the Arab Emirates, to the European Union, to Germany, and to the Netherlands, to Japan, all countries. To Canada recently joined, countries that are really trying to support us in doing this. We are extremely grateful for the support. It is extremely important to us. We want to have an impact. We believe that by using culture and heritage, we can actually produce economic and social development. It is, of course, in the course of UNESCO since the last 75 years, but now it's in the last many years we are really trying to move into working in countries on culture as a factor of development. How is it going? I mean, of course, to me, at the moment, I'm particularly pleased. Despite all the difficulties, we have reached a certain stage of progress that I think it's important. It was particularly difficult arriving here at the beginning of last year, around March, April, when I arrived in the country. Particularly difficult to rally everybody. It was extremely difficult because of the circumstances, because of the distraction of the city, because of the situation, extremely complex. So the fact that today, we have a plan and we are actually, cleaning up rubble, rebuilding places, demining, employing more than 500 people in the city, but we want to multiply that exponentially, of course, in the next few months. It is something that is really important. The cooperation we're having with the government is very good. The Department of Antiquities in Mosul, it's our partner, the Sunni and Christian Waqf. As you know, we're not only doing mosques, but we're doing also churches. We can come back on this one later on. But generally speaking, I think that you have to be optimistic if you embark into something like of this magnitude, like trying to rebuild the historical center and the landmark monument of a city that has 3,000 years of history like Mosul, when the destruction is probably beyond 70% in a city. You have to be optimistic. You have to think that every step you move forward is already a big step forward. So I know that there are moments where you are dissatisfied. There are moments where people that work with you or people that maybe support you are not that happy. But we move forward. I think that we have rallied also importantly. I think not only the government of the city and of Nineveh, but also the people. We are trying to do this even more. And this gives us a lot of boost to move and continue doing. We have a timetable. We will respect it by the day. I don't know. Was it difficult to have to cope with conflict, social unrest, and COVID at the same time? Yes, maybe. There's been a bit difficult, maybe too many factors at the same time. But this is what we had. You know that since October, many reasons last year have brought, since 1 year, the country has been mired in difficult situations because of a series of many different things, in fact. from political to security to now health. But we can move forward. We are moving forward. So I'm optimistic that the situation on the ground, I mean, you can see changes going around. So it's good. And of course, you know, we need to keep talking about this, and we need to make this as something that is shared by as many people as possible. And I come back to you for your questions.
Thank you, Paolo. What you mentioned is very important and enlightening. What I hear from the people of Mosul, especially when I pose this question to them, what does revive the spirit of Mosul means to you? They all talk about the diversity of the city as it was before. They are happy that there is this kind of initiative that is not only addressing, it's not addressing only buildings or stones, as the initiative itself represents through the title of the initiative. It's about the spirit of the city. The people are eager to get back this spirit, which lies in the cultural heritage, in the old markets where UNESCO is working, in the ancient buildings, in the education. You could hear that, yes, they are optimistic about this, but there is something important that I would like to mention here is that this initiative didn't only actually work on the local aspects of the reconstruction of Mosul, but rather it brought Mosul to a global stage where it convinced the global actors to be involved in such kind of reconstruction. And this alone is a very important element also of the initiative. I think you can see this from your side, from your end, that the future of this initiative is not only about the current programs of the UNESCO. Would you agree on this, or do you already have insights of how this initiative is actually impacting the future of Mosul on the global stage?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, we need to understand that this is going to take time. You know, there is no possibility of imagining a reconstruction on that scale that happens overnight. This is something that we will have to do for the next many years. We have substantial funding to be making, I think, some substantive change in the physical, probably fabric of a city already by next year, like kind of seeing things looking different. But it generally speaking, there are two things that are important. You're saying Mosul, does it represent a symbol? You know, in the last many years, unfortunately, we have seen something that we haven't seen so much, even in wars in the past, which is the deliberate destruction of cultural heritage, right? This has become a sort of another way to terrorize population, or to, in a certain way, assert the superiority of one culture on another. When in the past this didn't happen so often, at least in the last 150 years. In the last 5, 6, 8 years, we've seen that happening pretty much. I mean, and then you can go back to the Taliban in 2001, maybe, with the destruction of the Buddhist environment, right? But recently, in the recent years, there's been this kind of attack, deliberate attack. So does Mosul represent an opportunity? I think it does represent an opportunity, because at the moment is a symbol of a reconstruction that whereby we can show that all of us, I mean the people from Mosul as much as the international community, want to work together in order to bring back the common identity of the people of Mosul, but also cultural identity that is shared. You know, remember UNESCO's definition of World Heritage is actually a shared heritage, right? A place, a site becomes World Heritage, is the heritage of humanity, because in fact we recognize that by denominating that site as a World Heritage site, as a common heritage of humanity, then it means that each one of us share responsibility for that. So I think that Mosul, because of what's happening, it's becoming a sort of a shared, heritage of humanity. You know, there is on a tentative list. One day we hope it's going to become. But I think even if it's not physically and formally on the World Heritage List, it is in the minds of everybody a place that needs to be commonly safeguarded and where everybody is at stake. Not because Mosul is part of our daily lives, apart from mine, yours, and a few other people around the table, but because everybody can see that this is a space and a place where we can do something about bringing back the identity of a people, the identity of multiple layers of people, and at the same time safeguarding our own identity. So I think it's, yes, can also become an example. You know, there are many other cities around this area. We can think about Syria. You can think about, even, you don't have to think about conflict, what's happened in Beirut just last month, you know. So this Mosul cannot only be important for Mosul itself, but it can also be an example of how we can actually go back and rebuild better places that have been destroyed. I'm thinking about Aleppo, I'm thinking about Palmyra, I'm thinking about Beirut, I'm thinking about many other places that at a certain moment we consider lost, and maybe they are not lost, you know, like the big reconstruction of the Second World War in Europe, where most of what we didn't have, we have it back. I'm not going to go into discussing the different methodology of rebuilding heritage, but you know, it's not my specialty. But what I'm trying to say is that necessarily Mosul is a place for hope. You know, it has been a place for change, and a place for innovation in the past, but now it's also a place for hope. If we succeed in Mosul, then we can say to everybody, look, we've actually invested in culture, and the returns have been great. Because we have people proud of their past, people that reappropriate themselves of their past, people that start living together again because thinking that building a mosque and a church and a synagogue in the same place does actually make sense. People that start buying and selling books again, people that do arts again, open up galleries or school or music schools, and also people that get jobs through culture and heritage and art. People that get actually something to bring back. You know, I've always said, in my mind, every day there's only one consideration. Iraq needs a lot of immediate support. So everything we do, although I know that, you know, the Al-Nouri Mosque or the 200 houses we want to rebuild in Mosul, or the churches are not going to come back in 2 days. But I think that if in the process we are able to create a support for the population where we are.
Yeah, on this note, Paolo, thank you for mentioning this, because I was about to ask you about this very specific aspect is UNESCO and the initiative itself is actually relying on the local expertise and the local actors. To what extent do you think that UNESCO is also contributing to, I mean, or addressing this question when the people say, like, why would you spend money on rebuilding cultural heritage while we need, as you said, immediate funding for other aspects? But it seems that there is no contradiction or there is no problem for the two sides to go along. They can move together, as when you economize the cultural heritage, the people will benefit from this. And I think that now UNESCO has many on its staff in Iraq are from the local people.
Well, you know, I mean, we're worked in two different ways. The one is that, of course, we're bringing in some of the top expertise from the rest of the world in order to support us in what we do for the very specific things where maybe in Iraq we don't have that capacity. But for what it concerns the general number of jobs and expertise is actually all local. I mean, for example, the Department of Antiquities and the 15 archaeologists working with us are coming from the SBAH, Iraq Ministry of Culture. The engineers and the architects that are employed by UNESCO are coming from mostly the University of Mosul or the universities in the region in Iraq. The people working on the sites are all from Mosul. We are talking now in this space, of course, an employment of a smaller scale of what's going to happen when we have more and more sites. You know, at the moment we're working on the large site, the complex that is financed by the United Arab Emirates, and then on the houses around that, about 45 houses at the moment, plus some palatial buildings that are financed by the European Union, plus, you know, the mosque, Agawat, which is financed by Germany, and then of course we have all the education programs financed by other partners, which are as important. But remember, for our support and for our partners, the issue of creating jobs, employment, is fundamental. It's part of a whole thing. You know, it is not just about, oh, let's build back some houses or heritage houses or mosque. It is also about the idea of recreating an identity in the people by claiming back their identity, their cultural identity, their history. And the second one is about giving them an opportunity to get jobs in Mosul. So talking about, you know, small numbers, but if you consider that we at the moment employed like between 500 and 600 people in the chantier we have, if you compare that to a small medium enterprise in general, which has a staff normally between 10 and 50, you would consider that we have created almost 10 small medium enterprises in the last 6-7 months, which sincerely, it's a good thing, because it's not that easy. These are sustainable jobs, and some of them are unskilled laborers, but some of them are actually skilled. I'm talking about sustainable because this work of rebuilding Mosul is going to last for quite a while. So when you're talking to me about competencies, for example, do they exist in Mosul? Of course they do. And of course, we're also working with that, with our partners, and trying to create even more. You know, certain skills, certain crafts have been lost in the decades, not only because of the last conflict, the previous conflict, the different times, the socio-economic crisis. They all brought some kind of arts and skills to be lost. What we're trying is to bring them back so that people can actually understand what is the value of marble from Mosul, for example, used in order to do, for example, their doors frames. But, you know, you've been to Mosul, and you know that in the 70s, people used to paint back with plaster their marble decorations because they didn't like marble anymore, and that was it, you know. So an idea is also to go back and try to understand what was part of their heritage. But our idea is that most of the people employed will be from Mosul in Iraq. The skills will be from Mosul in Iraq, and I think that we will be able to create a generation as well. These people will work for us at least for 5 years. I hope more, of course. I hope we will be able to do this for at least 10 years. But if we work with this 5 years for young architects and engineers and archaeologists who will have an opportunity to work at this level, I think we will build a very, you know, maybe 100 very skilled professionals that can be then, of course, used by the country. The country is full of archaeology and needs to restore. Please.
Thank you, Paolo. I'll get back to you, but I will give the floor to Barbara from the EU delegation in Iraq. She is the head of cooperation in Baghdad. On what Paolo mentioned, that the job creation is a fundamental element of the UNESCO vision, but I think it's also what the EU delegation is putting on its priorities: the stabilization, job creation, reducing the poverty in Iraq. All of this is part of the EU delegation and the EU support to Iraq, yet the EU is still involved in preserving the cultural heritage. Would you give us an insight on the EU vision on the reconstruction and the protection of the cultural heritage of Iraq?
Yes, absolutely, with great pleasure. I mean, as you rightly pointed out, for us, the reconstruction of the liberated areas, the preservation of heritage, and the stimulation of the cultural diversity in Iraq in general, together with the economic aspects, go perfectly hand in hand. And this is really, I mean, the UNESCO project in itself in Mosul really perfectly embodies our EU approach. We attach enormous importance to protecting and valorizing heritage. but also there are many other sides linked to it, such as creating the local capacities, like Paolo was explaining, for the people of Mosul to take over this work themselves ultimately, providing job opportunities to local communities, especially now in times of COVID, is essential for us. And then also, and that's also part of this project, bringing back the striving cultural life in the old city, but equally in the new city, in order to get Mosul back to what it used to be, a living symbol of the very rich and diverse cultural mosaic of Iraq. These are typically our EU values, the values we share with our member states, because the EU in itself, with its 27 countries, it's just the embodiment of the fact of that multicultural and pluralistic identities. And we really see in this project the opportunity to bring all of this together in one thing, boosting the economy, boosting jobs, but also fostering social cohesion, for which we think working on the cultural side is so very important. Of course, we do have several other projects in Mosul. We're also invested, for instance, in entrepreneurship opportunities, like the opening of the station outpost in Mosul next week. We're very proud of that. We also work heavily with the universities in Mosul. But equally, we support local area development in the new city. So for us, Mosul is really at the center of our work. But then at the same time, we're also getting ever more invested in Basra, where we try together with Unesco to apply the very same approach about valorizing the old city and making it a hub for jobs, for creativity, while reminding everyone about the rich cultural heritage of Iraq.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to invite now Her Excellency Maysoon Al-Damluji, the Cultural Advisor to the Iraqi President. Thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us. And I apologize for the short notice, but yet you accepted the invitation. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry I missed the beginning. I wasn't able to join you from the very start.
Yes.
I look forward to the rest of the discussions.
Thank you. Your Excellency, we were discussing the UNESCO initiative in Mosul to revive the spirit of Mosul, not only the cultural heritage, but also the human aspect of this city that has been devastated by war and very long time of negligence. Now it's the chance to revive the city, and I know that you have a very deep connection to the city. Both of us actually we do, and that's actually the reason why we would like to hear from you, your vision as the cultural advisor on the Revive the Spirit of Mosul.
Well, I have nothing prepared. My family comes from Mosul originally. I was born in Baghdad, but I have very strong emotional ties to Mosul because of my father and his family and the food, the wonderful food that used to come from Mosul to our house in Baghdad. Anyway, I've been in touch with Paolo for many years about what is happening in Mosul, about the mosque and the churches and the area surrounding it. But the spirit, really, the spirit of plurality that we need to bring back. And this takes more than the UNESCO. This has to be an Iraqi measure or a set of measures to bring back the trust of the Yazidis, of the Sabians, of all the minorities. Mosul is probably has the most minorities in all of Iraq, and most of these minorities are really quite ancient. I mean, some go back to Greek times or Persian times or what have you. That's why this plurality needs to be preserved in Mosul. I remember as a little girl, we used to go there every spring, during the spring holiday, school spring holiday. And the nature of Mosul, the wildflowers that used to grow there in the spring. It is called the Mother of Two Springs. This is the nickname for Mosul, which needs to come back somehow. It is not impossible. It is not impossible, but there needs to be a vision that brings the international community as well as the local community together, as well as civil societies, the media, etc. Maybe this kind of discussion will bring, will sort of bring about a vision that is much needed by all. Thank you very much. Anyway, thank you very much for inviting me. I want to listen. I think my role here is to listen, not to lecture. So thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Thank you indeed. I will be back to Paolo to continue the discussion. Paolo, I assume you are still there. Yes.
You have a question, or you want me to just speak?
Yeah, I actually have many questions, but I don't want to put all the questions now because we need to continue this kind of discussion. As Her Excellency said, it's important to keep discussing this initiative. It's important to develop the discourse of the preservation of cultural heritage in Iraq and its connection to the economical life of the country of Iraq, not only in Mosul. Recently, the UNESCO also announced the Revive the Spirit. I don't know if it's part of the Revive the Spirit of Mosul, but we are also happy to know that UNESCO is reviving the spirit of Basra. This is also very important. Those cities are coming back to life through this approach of protecting the cultural heritage. You know that the Iraqi cultural heritage has been damaged and devastated for a very long time. Either it's the negligence, the other problems, other difficulties to maintain this cultural heritage, the security challenges, yet this initiative is redefining the cultural heritage in Iraq. I mean, from your communication with the public in Iraq, from your visit to all these sites in Iraq, what is the UNESCO vision to maintain and to sustain this cultural heritage for future development, for integration of cultural heritage in the economical life, not just the job creation, but for the cultural heritage to become again a face of Iraq. As you know, the cultural diplomacy now is taking over the foreign diplomacies of the world. How can Iraq, in cooperation and collaboration with the UNESCO, develop such kind of an approach and discourse?
Well, I mean, like, thanks to Barbara and Maysoon, it's, you know, working with them constantly. And so we discuss a lot about this. We discussed with you, Omar, you know, and I try to converse with as many people as I can in order to understand whether it's government people or other organizations, including the media. You know that the first thing, Iraq is probably, let's say at least one of the cradles of civilization, if not the, as somebody say, but we're talking about one of the places that had such an important place in history throughout 6,000 years that, you know, wherever you go, you will find superb elements of an old ancient past. Of course, most probably every country in the world will feel that they pertain to a very important past, but in this case, the history of this country, the history of this region is extremely rich. So you cannot deny that culture and heritage should represent an important part of the life of this country. The second element is, you know, I've been working for 3 years as a UNESCO rep to the European Union in Brussels. So for that, I've been working with, you know, Barbara and her peers and the people in the European Union during the debate on the role of culture in foreign policy for the European Union, for example. The debate that was particularly strong in 2016 and 17. And at that time, the first thing that we took out from all the work we could do was the statistics on the impact of culture and the creative industry in the GDP or in the of countries of Europe, where the average is about 7-8%. When you add tourism to that, you reach levels that are exponential. And I mean, if you look at the crisis of COVID and how much this has impacted because of the lack of tourism, the countries that are extremely rich by themselves, like Spain or France or Italy, you understand that we are talking about a sector which is the sector linked to heritage, archaeology, art, culture, and then cultural tourism, that in Iraq, like in other countries that are gifted by their history, could represent a very important part of their GDP, of their production, of their economic life, okay? Now, these two considerations go together with another one, which is the fact that Iraq probably needs its history back, right? It needs a moment of reconciliation based on the fact that of a shared identity that is, of course, not a monolithical identity, but is an identity of different layers of time and space that together brought what is the Iraqi identity. And I think that if you put these three elements together, the only answer we can give today is that we need to insist investing in that. It's the only way, because this can bring so many advantages, you know, from a reappropriation of your cultural identity and the possibility of building a peaceful society to the possibility of imagining an economic and social development to a future that is also creating tourism in Iraq based on the fact that this is one of the richest countries in the world in terms of history and culture. So yeah, if you look at peace and a future not so distant, I hope, and you think about peace and stability, I think that culture and history will have necessarily an important part in this country. But for that, you have to start planning now, not only by building and reconstruction like we're doing, but by creating human resources for that. For example, we've been discussing this with Maysoon and others, and also the new Minister of Culture recently. Iraq does not have a specific, for example, master's degree for conservation of historical and heritage. This is something that a few countries have. I agree. It's something that has been only created at the end of the Second World War in Europe because of the destruction. But it is something that Iraq has to start planning. Do we want in 10 years' time or in 15 years down the line to have enough human resources in this country to manage our tourism, to manage our sustainable tourism and cultural tourism, to manage our archaeology, to manage the rebuilding of our heritage and houses and buildings? I mean, only Babylon, it's out, only 3% of Babylon is out, 3%. It means that 97% of one of the most important archaeological sites in the world is absolutely under the rubble. No, that is such an immense opportunity in terms of employment, in terms of skills training, in terms of tourism, and this is just one site, you know, and I'm not going to tell you, you are, an Iraqi historian, so you know as much, better than anybody else how many sites we're talking about. I mean, many sites that have already a world fame, not places that we have to put on the map. We're talking about places that are already on the map.
Yes.
So, I believe if you put together these factors, there's only one possibility and only one way. Now, of course, we need to find the best way to go around. We need to discuss on this, but I think that today's discussion should be the first of a series of debates, which I hope sincerely, to everybody around the table, but the ravage of COVID and the impossibility for people to gather, it has been strongly impacting also what we're trying to do in terms of reviving the cultural life in Mosul. The city has been in lockdown for the last 6 months.
Yes.
We actually have been probably one of the very few organizations that have been able to maintain working sites open across these months, just because the governor and the mayor totally support what we do. But everything else is stopped in the city for the last few months. So, in this context, it's even more complicated, but hey, the country has 6,000 years history. You don't need 6 months. You know, we have all the time, but we need to start thinking with a clear vision on what should be. Maybe, you know, and here Maysoon can be, of course, one of our great supporters. Maybe Iraq need a vision 2050 on culture, heritage, and towards development. You know, this is something that could really help understanding how we could, you know, maybe get to a higher percentage of the economic development of a country, depending on culture and tourism, which is by itself green and sustainable, by the way. I'll stop here.
Great, thank you, Paolo. I'm pretty sure that Her Excellency will take all these recommendations in consideration and that she will discuss them with His Excellency, the President of Iraq. I also know that he has a good vision of the importance of the cultural heritage, but we really need your support, Your Excellency, to not only revive the spirit of Mosul, but to keep this spirit continuing and to become an example for the rest of Iraq. We rely on you, on people like you. It's also important for me to mention that the late Mohammed Al-Damluji, may his soul rest in peace, is part of my PhD. So I know what vision your family has, and that's why I am sure you will always think about the importance of the cultural heritage. Paolo, we have 5 minutes before we open the floor for questions from the audience. I would like to, I know that you have already said this many times, but I would like you to deliver a message to the people of Mosul as a director of the UNESCO office in Iraq.
Say what?
Your message to the people of Mosul on the reconstruction of Nuri Mosque, the Asaa Church, all the other beautiful parts of the city of Mosul, and how the initiative is actually for them, about them, and it's going to be it's going to make a good and positive difference to them.
Yeah, I don't feel like being in a position to tell anything to the people of Mosul. I think if I can be aspiring to something, is to be considered one of the people of Mosul, and like that, I will tell to all of us, you know, as a head of UNESCO, the only thing I can say is that we're going to be committed to do everything we can in order to implement the programs that we have. We will, in the next 4 or 5 years, at least. Be there committedly in order to do the work that we have promised we're going to do. Politically, also at the highest level, UNESCO is totally with Iraq and with Mosul. Myself, I'm here in order to make these things happen. So I'm trying to do more of you know, the reality come on the ground. I want like everybody from Mosul, I think, to see that things are happening on the ground. I understand sometimes the frustration of things not going as fast as it is, but you also have to understand that unfortunately, when you talk about heritage, you also have to talk about being cautious of doing things in a certain way. We are not trying to paint houses in black or green or white. We are just trying to bring back the value of those houses and of certain areas of the city in order for us to be able to see back. You know, one of the things we want to do is to bring back the impression to people that what they have, it's so beautiful that it's worth to be preserved. So what we want is to do a good job to bring back a certain number of houses and buildings that are going to be so astonishingly beautiful that people are going to start thinking, you know what, I'm going to keep my old house. I'm not going to tear it down and build a new concrete thing in pink because I think actually it's worth keeping it. And maybe UNESCO can help me. And by the way, for this, we are also going to develop this specific guidelines on what is considered to be heritage in Mosul, so that it's going to come in the next few months, and so that all the heritage and vernacular aspects of Mosul can be out there, also for others, you know, for others like other big agencies or countries that have funding to invest in the city. We want to tell them these are the aspects of Mosul that needs to be considered as architectonically valid, as heritage, as elements that will preserve the value of a city across the century. So what we can say is that we're going to be there. We're going to be there for sure. We're going to work hard. We're going to be there supporting, and something we want to do more than we have done now, because unfortunately also COVID stopped us from doing that, is to, we have established relations with quite a number of organizations, whether it's youth organization or universities or others in the city, or people like you or others, the book forum or whatever. But we want now to do this much more. We want to do it much more. So something that we really want is, we will start with a survey we're going to do with the University of Mosul to try and understand the feeling of the citizens in Mosul, the Moslems, about what's going on in the historical center of the city. And then we want to organize more of these cultural events that unfortunately we haven't been able to do because of what? You know, we wanted to organize so many things. We had so many ideas about visual tours of a city and try to make people go around to understand what we are trying to do by starting inviting university students and then school students to go and visit the sites and understand what we were trying to do by doing 3D reconstruction of the places. But unfortunately, we couldn't do any of this. But, you know, we will organize more and more things where people will have an opportunity to share with us their thinking of what they want. You know, we have a limited capacity to intervene, but it's also true that we have enough capacity to be one of the actors, and we want to continue being that. But you know, everything we do to support Iraqis and Moslawis. We don't have an agenda that is apart from that of the people from Mosul.
What a great message! Thank you so much, Paolo. Before I go to the questions, I just want to add something. Since he attended this event and we have been discussing, I know that the Dutch government is part of the EU and is already contributing, but Your Excellency, the Ambassador, Mr. Rentenaar, is there any opportunity that the Dutch government would think of creating a cultural center in Mosul or in Baghdad? I want to take the opportunity to raise this point.
Yes. Yes, hello, Dr. Omar. Thank you very much for your very late invitation, but I managed to squeeze it in. Unfortunately, I had to be out because there was a rocket attack just now, but I just came back. So that's part of life, unfortunately, in Baghdad. No, I'm very happy that you invited me. This is a super interesting subject. Obviously, I was listening with great fascination to the speakers. And especially I like the fact that, and this we feel very strongly about, we need to rebuild Mosul and its people in all its entirety. That it has to do with cultural rebuilding, but obviously for that reason also we as the Netherlands and many others like us have many programs. We have livelihood programs, we have cultural programs, we have job programs, we have programs focusing on vulnerable youth, on survivors of gender-based violence, mental health, security, you name it. My question would be to some of the speakers, how are we going to organize this? Everyone is trying to do its best from many different sides, but there seems to be a lack of proper coordination between what the Iraqi government is doing, what the city government is doing, and what we as internationals, either governments or NGOs, is doing. And there's a super amount of goodwill. But I'm still struggling. I've only arrived here a month ago, but I'm still struggling to find my right way to see where can we actually do it together so that what one hand does actually strengthens the other hand. Because I strongly believe that together we can rebuild Mosul. And we're very willing to do that, as are many of the other speakers, the EU, of course, Unesco, and many other actors. But there is a lot of uncoordinated help going on, let's say. So my question would be, how can we better streamline and make sure that what one hand does actually benefits the other hand as well?
Yeah, thank you for your insights and comments, Your Excellency. I think Barbara would have this kind of answers to your question, but I will give the floor to Paolo again to answer, and then Barbara might address your question, because she is the head of the collaboration in Iraq. Paolo, there is a question from Lima Shaddadi. She's a journalist. I don't know if you can read the questions from your side.
You're asking me skills that I probably don't have, but let me go.
Feel free to.
How do you restore the historical existence of Blood in Mosul, which is a key part of its cultural heritage?
Yes, I think it's already been has been addressed, but if you can add something.
Well, I mean, if you look at, I just want to add something to what the ambassador was saying on the importance of working on different fields. As you know, the Revive the Spirit of Mosul initiative by UNESCO is actually has an educational component, which is really important to us. In fact, one of the things that we are doing with the European Union, for example, is to rebuild schools. And one of the support we received from the Netherlands was actually to work also on preventing violent extremism in the northern territories, including also after Daesh. It's a part that we consider extremely important. I have to say that, you know, sometimes distinguishing culture and education seems pretty, you know, sort of sterile debate in the sense that, of course, education is culture and culture is education. But if we're talking about formal education, we are building schools. We are trying to bring back, you know, the spirit of Mosul also by bringing back education opportunities within the old city. So, for example, Ali Class School is one of the city in the symbolic school in the Christian Quarter that we are rebuilding close to the churches. It's also to bring back the students that now have to go and study in Eastern Mosul because there's no more schools in Western Old City. In terms of different communities, well, already I think the decision of the Emirates to decide to fund not only the building of a mosque and minaret, but also of 2 churches is already a symbol of what the journalist was asking. There is already an attempt there to look into other communities and to speak about the fact that this is not just one community, but different layers of communities. I know that others want to work on others. I am personally trying to make sure that, for example, the more, you know, we're building some landmarks with the Emiratis, but we're also going to build some landmarks building with the European Union. And we are trying to make sure that some of them will come from different periods and also from different religious or cultural, you know, layers of the city in order to respect that fact. You also know as an historian that unfortunately the history of Mosul is also that of destroying everything that came before the last. So, for example, we have almost nothing of Ottoman left there because everything was burned down when they were defeated. But, you know, we will try, of course, to work on that because that's exactly a part of the strength of this, the entire work in Mosul, which is not to forget that it's different communities living together in the same space.
Thank you, Paolo. Barbara, would you like to address the ambassador's question, please?
Yes, with pleasure. No, I think Michael's question is most pertinent, and I would actually like to link it to what Maysoon said at the beginning. I think the coordination between, I mean, what we really, I mean, whatever we as international community do in Iraq is going to be a small contribution. But I think it is what we need is the leadership of the Iraqis at the governorate level and at federal level to guide us and to coordinate our efforts with the own efforts of the Iraqi government. So I would really place that ball on the Iraqi side, because it is the Ministry of Planning, but then also the localities that need to guide us and tell us what their needs are. And then we can organize ourselves. But we really believe in this idea that everything we do and every support we provide to Iraq should be based on the demands and the needs of the country to which we want to deliver. And since we cannot talk with every single Iraqi, 40 million people, we rely on the intermediary function of the national authorities to help us and to guide our interventions.
Thank you. Osama, you wanted to, thank you, Barbara. Osama, you wanted to ask a question? Go ahead, please.
Yes. My name is Osama Mahmoud Agha. I am the planning and monitoring specialist in UNICEF, but I'm attending as a private or for my personal interest in this meeting. I'm also from, I come also from Mosul, yet I am based in Baghdad and working in Baghdad. I appreciate, as a local person, as Barbara were saying, I appreciate this initiative. I was actually following it through social media for 2 years now, and following all the progress made in the mosque and in the churches, and I really appreciate all the things that have been made. But I would like to ask about the continuation of the spirit of Mosul. I would like to see more highlight about the people's need in terms of housing, especially in the old city. And also, there are a lot of great sites in Mosul, very historical and very old, that need special attention, I think, from UNESCO, including the Hadar historical site, the Gate of Mosul, and then you have a small museum in Mosul which can be remodeled and can really, if it gets good attention, it will bring light to the city, and it will bring everybody together and will enrich the cultural experience in Mosul. And as a Maslawi in Baghdad, I would like to thank you so much for your contribution. I come from Al-Agha family, which you are rehabilitating Al-Aghawat mosque in the old city, and it is very appreciated from our family. And good luck. And as Barbara was said, she wanted to hear more from the local people. And me as UNICEF, yet I am speaking for my personal and family background, which came from Mosul as well. Best regards to all, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Osama. Paolo, we have 3 minutes before we finish the discussion. You have those 3 minutes.
Well, no, I mean, I just want to the last, to Osama, I want to say, well, you know, glad that you're happy about the work we're doing. You know, the Aghawat, unfortunately, at the moment we would be able to do probably the mosque itself, but the minaret is going to be more difficult with the funding we have. It's being also destroyed. It's of course smaller than the one in the you know, the Al-Adba, but it's still a quite important minaret, pretty old. So we need to see how we can do that. But the works at Aghawat are moving, and I'm happy about that. We are looking into with the European Union the Karasaray, which I think is also an important part of heritage. We're thinking about the gates of the city as well, because we think it would be. You know, we are at the moment we have identified together. This is a little paper sent by the Minister of Culture. We have identified about 25. You know, from the important buildings in Mosul, together with the Ministry of Culture and the Department of Antiquities, the ones that represent a little bit the symbols of the city, and that we could do with our partners. But then we are going to identify, we are working now on, as I said, on 45 houses, which we're already clearing from rubble. These are the ones around the mosque of Al-Nuri, if you know which ones I'm talking about, in the northern part of Al-Nuri Mosque, in order to create also, you know, as you said, attention to the people, because my fear is that we are investing a lot of funding in building landmarks, but then we have to think about the people living around those landmarks. So what we're trying to do with the different funding we have is actually to use them in a way that while we are building the mosque, we are also taking care of the people living around the mosque in order for them to have houses. But those houses are heritage houses. They're very important houses. All those small, they're very important houses. So we don't want just to, you know, plaster them and say that's done. We want to really bring back their value as being part of the old fabric of a medieval old city, Mosul. But our idea is that we're going to do a survey together, by the way, with another UN partner, UN Habitat, of about 500, normal houses, so people's houses in Mosul. Of course, I'm talking still old city center houses with a heritage and historical value. Out of those 500 houses, I'm not telling you we're going to be able to rebuild them all in the next 5 years with what we have, but I'm telling you that at least we will offer, let's say, a plan for whoever wants to come in with funding or taking our place or whatever they want, or the government deciding to invest itself into Mosul city center. They will have, let's say, a path that has been already a little bit detailed down there. I think we will be able, with the funding we have, to do maybe 150 houses. If we get more than that, we will be able to do more. But the important thing is that we have an idea. If you look at the old city Mosul, the entire, a little bit the round thing that you see in every single map, I'm telling you that at least as UNESCO today, we will not be able to impact that entire territory. So the territory that we are actually thinking now is more or less between the Al-Noor Mosque and the river, going through, if you've seen the bookstore alley, and then the Christian Quarter, and going to Arawat. So that's a little bit the area where we can have an impact. It's probably what will be 1.5 kilometers long and maybe 500 meters wide. It's not exactly what you would say, let's rebuild the whole city, but it's very hard. Mosul actually is not a small city, even the old part. So the impact we want to have is now to work on an area where people are going to find back the social fabric of what used the social and historical fabric of what used to be their heritage. When you walk around, the idea is that you should feel that something has come back. So we need to really focus a little bit on that part. And by the way, just to finish, and this is also a discussion we're having with the European Union, we would like in the future also with the help of others, I don't know whether this will concretize or not, whether it will go ahead or not, I don't know, but the idea is also to try and work with cultural enterprises in order to support them in the city of Mosul. So that you don't only have houses built or museum or churches or mosques and minarets, that you actually are going to help a certain a fabric of cultural industries that can be revitalized and come back. And by the way, I always have a hope, that local tourism, not maybe today, but maybe 2 years down the line, we can have local tourism coming back to Mosul, when a few places will be back, when some streets will be, paved back as they used to be. And then I hope that some people will find also opportunity to have some simple economic, commercial, whether it's the cuisine, as Maysoon was saying, or it can be, places to sleep, or places to drink a tea, places to maybe go to a music concert, or go to an art exhibition, whatever it is that can recreate. When we ask people what they want, yes, they want the whole city back, but they also want an old city that can live back. They want to go back to live. So they want schools, they want services, they want restaurants, they want chahana, they want the possibility for them to go back and live the city of Mosul. So that's what I think we need to, I don't want to have a discourse that is only heritage focus, because otherwise we risk losing it. But I'm UNESCO, so I don't build, new houses for people to live in the suburbs. I can help people go back into their old environment. I can help in that part of the city. That's my business. But I am very clear that even if we're working only on the city center and the heritage part of Mosul, we also want to back services. We want to bring back the possibility for people to walk around, to have a walk, to see houses restored, but also to experience whatever it is that Mosul is offering, whether it's food, whether it's arts and crafts, you know, whether it's shops, whether it's music, whether it's theater, whether it's galleries. So this is the idea. We want to make it a living place, not a dead place. It has to be back to what it used to be. Sorry, Omar.
That's okay. Thank you, Paolo. That's why the coordination and creating a coalition that includes Unesco, other organizations all together to work in one line is very important. I would like to thank you for your important and great contribution. Thank you, Your Excellency Al-Damluji, for attending. The ambassador, the EU delegation. I don't know if we had someone from the UAE, but also thanks to them for their great contribution to the reconstruction of Mosul. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe, all of you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you to all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.